It is it is a big job, but it also can be a lonely place. So it can be a place where we're the only person in our organization worrying about the things that we worry about, taking accountability and responsibility for what we take into our role. And so let's just be in a space to acknowledge that. And hopefully you can learn something here today. Maybe it's things you already know, and it's a chance to reflect on it again. And maybe it's time to also just have a think about how you normally lead and how you like to lead. Let me just share my screen.
While Chaya is sharing the screen, feel free to use the Q&A to put in your questions at any point of time. So I will take the opportunity to communicate the questions to Chaya whenever she's in between slides, so you can get it answers, and we keep it as interactive as possible for everybody. Yeah, so use the Q&A or use the chat, however is convenient for you guys.
Great, thanks, Smitesh. So this is what we're going to cover today, and there's three pretty big topics, but I'm going to give you a short summary. I will share the slides afterwards, and the recording will be available. So if you want to go back and revisit, I really would advise you to do that. So we're going to have a look at leadership styles and one particular model of leadership styles. There are many models. It's really a place to try and see yourself in there and have some time of reflection. We're going to talk about listening and practice that a little bit as a skill. And then we're going to talk about some of the ways in which you can lead and be impactful, it's particularly in the relationships that you have with people working with you, working for you, and also your stakeholders. So here's where your pen and paper or virtual pen and paper comes in. I want you to just take a moment and just pause, take a few notes about what has actually brought you here. What would you like to be thinking about in this space? Have a think about some of those big leadership challenges, the frustrations that you might have. It helps to see that you're not only the first person with that problem, and certainly not the last person, but in capturing that, know that you're not the only person with these challenges and frustrations that you might have. I'll just give you a second to just make some of those notes. So I have this sticky that says rumination is for cows. I can see it here on my on the board I have here, because we can often get into a place of overthinking about the challenges and frustrations that we have. What I want to get us to is into action mode, into really thinking to put into action, into making decisions, and thinking and ruminating over things often can leave us in a place where we end up maybe a little more frustrated than when we started out. So this session is also trying to move you to a place where actually you can take some of the challenges and frustrations that you have and start to put them into actions. It could be that they're leadership challenges, people challenges, others. I mean, it's what we talk about when we talk about leadership is often around the softer skills, human skills, as I call them, and it is often the thing that we didn't learn and isn't our area of expertise. We become leaders and experts in our field with deep, narrow expertise in the thing that we are great at, but that suddenly turns into an organization, and then we're leading people. So the challenge is real. The challenges can make you feel like you're alone in it, but hopefully you'll see that your challenges can be overcome, and really spending a bit of time and thinking about those challenges will help you to be able to focus on them and not let them be in the way of your success. So we're going to go into leadership styles, and I've chosen Goleman's 6 leadership styles. They're kind of old, but oldie and a goodie. As I said, I'm going to give you the slides, so especially when you get to the next slides, kind of busy. You might want to refer to that later. So Goldman did a big piece of research from consultancy that he's also working with, and they studied many, many leaders, and they found that the best leaders were actually the leaders who were able to move in and out of different styles of leading. So it isn't the idea that one of these is who you are, and only that is who you are. What it showed is that those leaders who were the strongest leaders, so great performance, but also great relationships, they had their particular distinct style and their preference, but they read the room. When necessary, they were using different styles. Goldman, you might recognize this name if you know anything about emotional intelligence, because he also around the same time was developed the idea of emotional intelligence and wrote a book on this, and many books which are looking at this. And the leadership styles are good to bear in mind, in that when we work on our emotional intelligence, so our ability to read and manage emotions that we have, but also see what the needs of others are, then we're able to flex our leadership style according to what we see in front of us. So reading and listening to the room and learning about what is actually needed. We might not get this right the first time. So often leaders who do this naturally, it may seem like they're doing this naturally, but they may have learned this along the way, sometimes from their own mistakes, sometimes from seeing others. And so if you look at this list of these different styles of leadership, what might start to come in your mind is people who have led you, people who you have seen who demonstrate these sort of styles. So as much as we learn through our own experiences, there is also a richness of value of what we learn from seeing and observing others. So here's the slide with lots of text on it. This is the only slide I'm going to show you with a hell of a lot of text. So yeah, I will go through this, but I would invite you to revisit and take a bit of time to absorb what's in here and do any extra research yourself if this is interesting to you. So the affiliative style, I've often seen this style really work well with teams that have been through a lot of change. I was helping a leader in an organization who they had been through change after change, and they were holding almost like a trauma, just the idea of another reorganization or another change of market or whatever was coming. They had spent a long time in their organization only being changed and out of their control. And they got a sense that their voices weren't valued. So this affiliative style was absolutely perfect there. There are downsides, as you can see. This one is it doesn't address things like poor performance and or to a lesser degree, and it can be hard to get to decisions because we're trying to actually find value and harmony and trust with each other. Pace setting. Now on pace setting, you see a little asterisk on the side. The asterisk, and this is also on the commanding and coercive, these are two that Goldman says are damaging to climate. And climate you can think of as like the corporate culture. When we overdo these two, they can be really detrimental to the culture you have and to people's morale, and it can be really stressful. So those are the two to use very sparingly. So if we look at pace setting, this sometimes is like micromanaging. It's the checking and pushing on results and wanting things a certain way. Now that's really valuable in some contexts. On a production line, you absolutely do want that because you want high quality and on a specific criteria. But this can be really demoralizing and demotivating. Democratic is really good when we're trying to bring harmony around different people's values and opinions, particularly like when you need collaboration and we need a collaborative culture to be fostered. this democratic style is perfect for that, but it's not going to be quick. It's going to be a slower pace. So that's something to bear in mind. Visionary and authoritarian. So you see some of these have 2 words, and Goldman has actually changed. I think with this one, he may have even used 3 different words to describe. So you can see this model has sort of evolved over time. With visionary, the value is of the position that you hold as being the leader with a certain viewpoint that gives a higher level of purpose and goals. And that is often when there isn't that perspective in the people that you're leading. So it may be that they're not in the environment you're in, and therefore they require you to have the viewpoint that you have and communicate that down. So it is about this bigger picture to help create a vision. It's hugely motivating in some places and in some contexts. It can be damaging if you've got people who are subject matter experts in your teams, and they know more, then actually they may not be looking to you for vision. But this one is really about grounding people in the purpose and goals. Commanding and coercive. This is one which is very reactive, and it's needed often in like an emergency situation or a crisis, the burning platform, the sudden failure of a product reaching a client, and it requires people to move fast, and there isn't a big discussion. It isn't this democratic thing. We're not trying to keep people happy. We just need the thing done. It isn't helpful, and it is one to be avoided when there's any kind of emotions involved and empathy is needed, because there's just not time or space for this. This, when overused, you can see can really be quite tiring. It gives a huge rush of adrenaline and cortisol, which are quite harmful chemicals to have in your body, and especially over time, this is high stress and often gives you burnout. Coaching. Now, this sounds like this is the best style, and Goldman certainly doesn't say that there are any that are better or worse, but this is certainly one that you can see that is much more about the longer term growth of people. So when you're leading an organization over a period of time and you're invested in individuals developing themselves, helping them to think for themselves and develop themselves, then this is a style that helps to give the thinking space for people and give people time to come to the right conclusion that is right for them. It is kind of slow, but it's a long-term investment. So I'm just going to pause there and just see. Maybe
we do have a question in there. It's a 2-part question. So the first part is, what is your definition of leadership? And the second is, how would you explain the difference between leadership and management?
Leadership to me is about the influence that we have, influence and impact that we have on others. So anyone can be leading. As a parent, we're leading. As a friend and a sister, or whichever roles we play, we have the opportunities to be leading. And when we see our role as that, then we can act in that accordance. The difference between leading and managing, what I see often is that when we're managing, we're into the we need performance, we need a certain a reaching of goals, we're going into how it's done, we're going into how we work together. It is in the space of dealing with relationships, but we're managing in a much more hands-on way. We're looking at targets, we're looking at progress. When we're leading, we need to be stepping out of the weeds. We need to create some distance so that we can view the perspective. If you think about the visionary style of leadership, that's very much in the space that's what kind of making some of the distinction about the role that is played here as a leader, in that it requires you to have a vision and communicate that well so that others can see what you mean. Role modeling is really important there, showing people, leading people. when you're in a space of leadership rather than management, it is so much about people and understanding what drives people and what motivates them, being aware that how people think and how they feel absolutely drives their behavior. And often as a manager, the difference is that we've been wrapped up in the management of the delivery of how. So what I often see is that people go in and out of managing and leading because the role requires us to, especially when you're working in small teams and for example, working in an organization of 5 people, that you are the leader and there's only 4 other people in your organization, you will need to move in and out of managing and leading. But those roles both need to be there and they both need to exist. Does that help? I hope that helps. Any other?
If right now we don't have any other question.
Okay, let me go back to sharing screen. Finding my mouse, there it is. So I would like you to just spend a little bit of time to reflect when you're looking at those sort of styles.
Sorry, Chaya, before we go, we do have one more question which just came in.
Really, yeah.
So you talked about the 6 leadership styles, and you talked about that, Goldman. He talks about moving between different styles. The question is that we have a natural inclination for maybe 1 or 2 different styles. Are there any methods or suggestions on how we can practice moving between different styles and using other styles that may not come naturally or we may be less comfortable using?
Yeah, this model, like many, they're observing kind of grouping of styles that we might feel more naturally inclined to. A big piece of being able to flex in and out of different styles is about understanding what your own default is. Where's your own comfort zone? What is the one that you will default to, and noticing yourself doing it? So that's sort of the first step, is to become really aware of what have I automatically gone to. A problem arises, it's a particular kind of problem. There might be a type of style that I'm moving into naturally. Sometimes when we don't see that, it's a really good opportunity for us to ask others, what did I move to? What style did I move to? I've seen many leaders believe that they go to an affiliative style, but actually they may be stepping into, they may be perceived from the other person's perspective to move into pace setting. So do that piece of check to understand what you're actually doing in the first place, and then allow yourself this time to, when you notice, think about what is needed of me here. And when we're not clear, ask. I think we can focus on trying to use these styles as inspiration to move to a much more flexible style where we're looking at what is needed. Now, when we hear feedback from someone to say, but I just need to understand what the big picture is. Now, actually, I need to go into this visionary style to actually give people an idea about what is the overall goal here. They need some motivation. They need to understand how they contribute to the larger purpose. So I need to do that. But then I may need to go back to another style that helps to move people along. So it is about self-awareness, and it is about listening to understand what people might need and what differences there might be in what I think I'm doing and what they are feeling that I'm doing. Really great questions. So you can actually just take a picture of this if you want to, because what I'm going to ask you to do next is to just do a bit of that reflection yourself. And I'm just going to give you a few questions, which is to think about what this actually means for you. And exactly, really good question, because what is your natural style? But looking at your natural style, what is working for you? What is really your strength and that we need to lean more into, so that you can become that leader that is really natural, authentic. This is the thing that you do naturally. And what's not working? Where do we need to work harder to become more conscious about the type of leadership we would like to be able to flex in and out of? You might already see some of those styles that you need to develop, but also what do you want to develop? Where do you want to be as a leader? And if you can come to some actions, it's really great to think about some of the specific actions you might take to start to build that leadership skills. Might be even just about observing what's going on, asking for feedback. But what else could you be doing to try and practice those sort of skills?
Chaya, could you also give some, maybe from your own life or from your experiences with working with other people, some actions that people have taken to develop other kinds of leadership skills?
Yeah, sometimes we might observe a type of leadership style in another person that we admire, or that we just see that is one that we need to develop ourselves. So, for example, if you see someone who's really a coaching kind of leader, how can you work with them? How can you, maybe it's kind of a mentoring. Often we can do a bit of an exchange of the kind of skills that we want to develop in ourselves, and they may see something in us that they want to develop in. When we can learn from others, that's great. When we get coaching from people, that's really lovely. It helps us to have someone to talk it through with. As I said at the beginning, it can be quite a lonely place to be a leader. So where you've got community, maybe it's a community like this, but often this is where folks do work with coaches, is to help work on specific things like types of leadership style. So that's one example, is partnering with another person to develop the things, the skills that you have. Certainly just doing some self-reflection and self-work, that's always a good one to understand. How did I show up in that moment, and how did I feel about showing up in that moment? What feedback we get from people, taking moments to pay attention to what's happening. We can, of course, do lots of courses and read lots of books. So I would never discourage anybody from doing that. There are many leadership skills, and many of them, these soft skills, which are actually really hard. And spending the time to first recognize what's really important, what's holding me back from being able to lead my organization in the way I need and want to. And need and want are both really important. We need to think about, what do we think we need to do, and what do we really want to do? What do we really want to develop ourselves in? Okay. So hopefully this has got you kind of thinking, and I have mentioned a few times listening, but listening is certainly a really important skill. When it comes to emotional intelligence, I think it's really the bedrock, like core skill for us to develop. But everybody listens all the time, but we don't really do it that well. So I wanted to take you through what not listening is, because sometimes it becomes a habit. Sometimes we think we're listening really well, but actually what we're doing isn't creating a listening space for the other person. And we might have our own motives for listening. So I kind of call this pseudo listening, or they're often empathetic misses, really. And then there is active listening or deep listening, which is much more the opportunity for us to be able to really be in service of that relationship that we have, and deepen our understanding of the other person that we're listening to. So I wanted to ask for a volunteer, and if there aren't any volunteers, I can pick on somebody or even bring in this. But I wondered if someone wanted to kind of role model with me what not listening looks like. So as you have a think about whether you want to volunteer yourself, I will ask that person to tell a story. Maybe it's about something that's happened recently or something that you're excited about. And then I will do this, which is not listening. And here's what it looks like. Sometimes we're preempting or sort of finishing off people's sentences. We are in our mind coming to our own conclusions about what that person wanted to say, which kind of pulls us out of the whole point of the conversation, which is maybe to learn what we didn't know. We often, and everyone's got a friend who does this, link back to ourselves. So, oh, you went on holiday to Spain. Oh, I've been to Spain and I went to here and there. And, you know, so when a person says something, it triggers something in our own experiences that we then feel like we want to share. Judgment, so seeing things as positive or negative, and putting our own judgments onto the thing that people are saying. Interruptions are really it's really a shame when people interrupt, because you actually don't allow that person to fully express themselves. The yeah, which is like even talking, it's almost like announcing that it's my turn now, which can be hugely distracting. Shoulder surfing is this thing which happens in face-to-face, where the person's talking, but actually you saw something happening behind them, and now you're not talking to them anymore, or literally looking out. Sometimes I have a window here, and then I can see something happening outside my window, and then I'm distracted. And then the classic modern day one, which is checking your phone and emails and those sort of things. So, Smitesh, has anybody volunteered themselves for some experience?
I do not see anybody volunteering. Can I nominate somebody? I did pull Elisa in, so I guess she can do it if she's not
Are you willing, Elisa?
Yeah, okay. So should I play the role of not listening, or should I tell a story, or what?
That is up to you. I think you can maybe practice telling your story, and then I can do some not listening. Would you, or would you prefer to do the?
No, okay. I
do you have a story in mind, first of all?
Okay, I can tell you that last week I started planning my holidays for this summer, and we have been looking into some options. We are planning to visit.
When did you say? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Oh, last week. Last week we were planning the holidays, and we're
the holidays. Okay, yeah, all right.
We are planning to go to the south of Italy.
Italy, or
yes,
where is it? Is it really wise to go right now? It's kind of hot.
Sicily seems to be very good weather.
You should go to the north, though. I think the north is much better.
Okay, but we found a very good opportunity with good prices in a fantastic hotel, and we've been
hotel.
Yeah,
Airbnb is like it's so much a better experience.
Yeah, well, we prefer to stay in a hotel, more comfy, and you have the breakfast ready and this type of things. But
you could make your own breakfast. That would be so much better. It's really expensive to get a hotel.
Well, doesn't matter. We work for something, right? So let's take care of ourselves.
Shall we stop, Elisa? How did it feel, Elisa, for you?
Well, it's like always trying to recover the conversation and trying to justify my decisions, and dealing with the not losing the path of what I was saying, and trying to coming back to the main topic. It's taking.
What you say is really key, because there is a thread of information that you wanted to share, but I've not given you the chance to actually really fully express what you wanted to say. Do you like me very much during that conversation?
In fact, it was when you were suggesting this type of interruption, putting the example of Spain before, that it came to my mind, because this is a very common practice when you talk about trips, that everybody else start talking about their own experiences. That in some ways also written, because you can learn from other experiences, but it's like not allowing you to share with your expectations and your own experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And from my own perspective, it feels horrible because I feel like I'm not giving you any chance to express yourself. When we role play this, usually everybody feels uncomfortable, not only the person who's being interrupted and not being heard, but also the person who's you feel like you're actually behaving in a way that's almost not really socially acceptable. But what often happens, and thank you, Elisa, thank you for volunteering, forcibly volunteering. What often happens is that when we're stressed, when we're in conflict situation, or we're pressure, all these moments where we're not consciously thinking about the quality of the listening that we're doing, we move into not listening. We move into some of these habits. And realistically, we've learned some of these habits from, we go to school, we have to have the right answers. We move into professional careers, and we have to also be on it and be in front of the answer and the solution. You need to be thinking quickly. But actually, when it comes to listening, the more space we give to be slower and more intentional, the better the quality of the listening that we do. So there's something else that we do, and I need to share my screen again. So I'm to do this. There's something else that we do, which is not quite listening, but we think we're listening. These are empathy failures. These are ones where it's not really empathy. It's not really, and by empathy, I mean that we are really acknowledging and hearing and honoring that person's emotional and cognitive experiences, so how they think and how they feel. These are the ones that kind of interject there and don't quite allow that full expression. So it could be the advising, educating, fixing, which is a very common one. And if you see what we were talking about in the leadership styles earlier, sometimes we can slip into these things because we think this is part of our role. And when we think about a manager's role, this is what a manager and sometimes a leader is tasked to do. But when we're in an opportunity to really have empathetic and really deep listening, these are not the things that help us. Analyzing, comparing, data gathering, this is very like getting into the weeds and the specifics. I'm asking Elisa, is it this week or next week? Or, and then I'm interrupting. Now, is it a Tuesday? Now, Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon? It's all very specific information. It is not in service of that person's story. It's in service of my own curiosity, and then takes me out of the space of really listening. Discounting, assuring, Elisa wants to stay in a hotel. Now I'm kind of discounting the hotel as something that's not a wise decision, and it takes us into a space where we're no longer acknowledging what that person needed or wanted. The reassuring and the sympathizing is more like the, oh, poor you, that must be that must be terrible, I'd hate to be you, kind of. But it's not a place that allows and opens up and accepts that emotion. So yeah, these are ones to kind of just watch out for. Particularly those ones at the top kind of feel quite natural to come in, and when someone has a problem or a challenge, to offer a solution, to advise. Sometimes they do want advice, and this is where we can ask if that's what they need. All of these things are ones to watch out for when we think we're really listening, and ask people how they felt about the listening that we did. And we can often catch ourselves, like, I just came with a solution. Oh, sorry, I just went to a solution. I just suggested Airbnb, at least, but actually, is that it wasn't maybe helpful for you, because I guess you really prefer hotels, and when you catch yourself in that moment in using one of these, loop back, ask the person, realize whether that was helpful and whether that was something they were asking for or not. Okay, so then this is what more active listening looks like. It's being really present. Often when we do this, the pseudo listening, or even worse, the kind of not listening at all, we're not in the current moment. We're thinking about something that happened before we walked into that conversation, or what's going to happen next. And sometimes even worse is something that's happening the other side of the room, or in my emails, or somewhere else, and we're not present. Presence is really felt. So a person who you're really having a conversation with, if you imagine you're just walking home with a friend and you're just chatting casually, and a dog comes by and you notice it and you talk about that a little bit. It's very different to when the friend tells you a family member passed away. Now you're present. It's the really allowing yourself to really fully immerse into that experience, and then they see it and they feel it. When they've just told you that a family member passed away and a dog walks by, you're less likely to notice it because you're really committed to the presence that you have there. And it's, that is also seen and appreciated by others. Staying out of judgment. Often we are triggered of the things that touch on our values and our beliefs. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the same, but also when we move into judgment, people start to feel that judgment. They feel judged, and therefore they're less likely to express themselves. This is one to watch as leaders, because we create the environment and climate for psychological safety. So when people feel judged, when they show some vulnerability and they feel judged, they may not share that level of intimacy again if we show judgment. Asking questions, the quality of your questions will also be a reflection of the quality of your listening. When I've really listened well to what Elisa's was saying about her holiday, then I know what questions might be nice to ask. Like, she said something about her family. If I was really listening much better, then I could have asked her, whether they had her family, who is she going with? Are you going with children? Are they excited about the holiday? Then I ask a different kind of question. And looking at how she's thinking and how is she feeling. Is she getting stressed about her holiday? Connecting with what she's telling me and what clues that gives me about how she might be thinking and feeling. And that also could be about what she's not saying and what I'm seeing in her behavior. Is she really excited to be going on that holiday, or is she worried in some way? So how can we connect on that? Because that allows me to be able to be in a more rich relationship with her, to maybe address some of the things she might need and want, and letting them finish, because interruption really doesn't allow that person to fully express. Some people talk to think. I'm one who will start a sentence and I have to signal it to people and say, I'm just talking so that I can think this through. Can you let me just talk this through? Now, if someone interrupts me in the middle of that, it interrupts my thinking. Other people may have fully formed their idea about what they need to say, and have a clear idea of the beginning, middle, and end of their piece that they want to share. And when we have interrupted that, we also don't allow them to fully express the thing that they wanted to talk about. I was going to invite Elisa back into practice, but I think just looking at time, it might be nice to give you this as a challenge and an exercise to think about. Have a think about how you go into the next conversations that you've got. What's the next conversation you're going to be having today, later on, with friends maybe? Where are the opportunities where you can have a look back? I'm going to just go back a few slides. When are you doing the things that show you're not listening, intentionally or unintentionally? Where are those opportunities where we can put our phones down, create the space to just stop and think about some of the things that we do that are habitual? Where are the things that we do when we have really good intentions and we're really trying to be the person who listens, but up comes this need to help, need to fix, maybe some curiosity about things that are related to the person's story, but where can we actually start to notice those things more and more? And noticing it is the first step to being able to just slow ourselves down and make another choice. And here are the choices that we can make to really go deeper into being really there and present, and listening well, staying out of judgment, allowing them to fully finish, leaving a little pause to see if they really did finish, asking much better quality questions, really reflecting on what they're saying, and seeing what clues you get about how they think and they feel. Okay, so I'm going to move to the last section, and then maybe I'll take questions all at the end. So yeah, as you see from what I've been kind of talking about quite a lot, is that leadership is, of course, about those decisions, the performance we drive, the work we do. It's also about the relationships, and a lot of what we've talked about is wrapped in those relationships. This is a model that I wanted to share with you, and it comes from a book which is called Radical Candor. And a bit like what I was saying about what we've learned over time, our learned behaviors as children. We learn what was right and what was wrong, what we should and shouldn't say. We go through our experience at work where we need to have the answers, we need to be right, we need to perform, we need to do well. And then we step into a workplace where we need to then be professional. And we get an idea about what being professional is, because we're rewarded or punished for those things. So we learn that crying is an emotion or an expression of emotions that is not allowed, but shouting is an expression of emotions that is allowed. And we may not have done it ourselves, we may have seen others do it. We have ideas about what's rude or what's impolite. And this is very different in different cultures. The initial thinking for this book was quite US based, but when we look across different cultures, we can also see that there are versions of this that can be helpful and can be detrimental to relationships. So each one of these quadrants kind of gives us a kind of behavior. So let me just go back a bit and just explain these, the axis. So the axis that goes here, top to bottom, at the top is a personal care. It's actually really caring about the person. Somewhere down here are some expletives, which are kind of like a bit of a jerk, or someone who just really does not care about the other, but is caring more about themselves, or not at all. Along the horizontal axis is the extent to which you challenge, and that challenge is direct. So on one end, it is very open and very direct. Being in the Netherlands, this is certainly where I think the culture stereotypically kind of sits. And the other side is silence, or not quite expressing yourself fully, or a kind of polite version where we're kind of staying out of that directness. And as a British person, I certainly relate to that. So here's where, when we care personally, so we really care about those people, but we don't really want to make them feel bad. We don't want to create hurt feelings. We don't want to create stress or pressure. So we give praise that makes people feel good, and we hope that that's going to push them towards good work. But we haven't quite given the feedback about things that aren't going so well. So what happens over time is that people learn, and they realize that the positive praise that they're getting all the time isn't actually helping them to grow. It isn't actually helping the objective. It might be kind of staying in like a nice place, but a nice place that doesn't get results. And it undermines that strength and growth and addressing the problems and issues that there are in teams. This is a kind of dark place. it's manipulative insincerity. It's when you're caring more about being liked, that you don't want to directly give feedback that might be difficult to hear, but you're doing it from a place that you're not caring about what that person thinks. So it is about being liked by others for yourself, but it isn't about caring. And sometimes it's even faking care for others. And this is kind of a dishonest place to be, and it tends not to have positive outcomes from it. It certainly deteriorates trust. Then we have what they call obnoxious aggression, and this is where you not only do you fail to do that personal care piece, but you're also going in aggressively, indirectly challenging, and that can be in terms of positive feedback, but can also be negative feedback. So it could be aggressive praise, which could be, for example, really singling someone out, but praising them in a way that it doesn't have the care element. We might not be picking on the social cues that there might be. It might be helping one person feel good, but at the expense of others. And then that aggression sort of continues into the kind of feedback that we get that is criticism as well. Is this sort of weaponizing the directness that people need and want, but doing it not for their benefit, but for your own. And the last one, this is the style that is, according to this book, the ideal is that not only do we need to have this care and compassion, this connection with people, but that we also need to, because we care about those people, see that it's our responsibility to challenge them directly. So this is where the highest performing teams come. This is where there's like a candid flow of information. It goes upwards, downwards, sideways. People share information with each other, which is praise and criticism, but in a clear, kind, and sincere way. We're really specific about what it is we want to be sharing and how we want to be talking to each other. And there's humility there. It's helpful. We're also in the present moment when we're thinking about the person and also about the quality of the feedback that we give them. We're much more present. And it isn't about different personalities. It's really about putting ourselves in service of the work that needs to be done on the relationships. And it's not giving priority for task over relationship or relationship over the task. It's really holding it in balance. So that was a lot, and I'm going to just pause and see. I mean, I think this is a huge model to dip into, and it's certainly something that I would encourage you to have a look at. I do have a little bit of time for questions, but before I do that, I would just invite you to have a think about. I've given you a lot of information and a kind of a deep dive into some aspects of leadership, but make a plan. Have a think about what can you do different tomorrow? What can you do different even today? And have a think about how you show up as a leader. Are you leading? Are you managing? What ways in which are you leading and managing? What are your styles? And what are you? What's the quality of your listening? Yeah, just the last slide from me. You can certainly get in touch with me. My email is here and I'm on LinkedIn. I have a Human Leadership Collective, which is just a community of folks who just get together to really address and talk about what is human leadership and communication. It's a community that we have a regular call. I do more work around leadership training and coaching, and particularly we have a big challenge around sustainability and ESG, but certainly there's more pressure on organizations to really be leading and leading our businesses in a different way, and that does mean some deeper work. So I am working with the inner development goals, and I have a hub where we're really focused on human leadership and the systems and cultures that we have internally. So talked a lot. have a few minutes left for questions. So let me stop sharing and see if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chaya. We don't seem to have any questions yet, but I am guessing it takes a while to type out sometimes. So let's just give them a minute or two to see if any questions come in. But thank you so much for introducing us to the different models and talking a bit about how leadership, how we can identify and change our styles and so on. So that was quite illuminating, at least for me. Any questions? There is one question coming as okay. Well, it's a slightly off topic, but it's a question nevertheless. Can you explain a bit more on the work you do on ESG and how it connects to the work around leadership and so on?
Yeah. So the ESG, which is it's really the sustainability challenge that's ahead of a lot of organizations, being held accountable for the way in which you run businesses, the environmental impacts, social impacts, the governmental impacts. And the work I'm doing is looking at the inner development goals, and the context of that is that we have the sustainability goals. We're beyond halfway and we're not there. And there's more and more pressure on businesses to do better. And it was sort of optional till now, but now it's really now going to ramp up. So organizations are looking at the way in which they do business. And so much of that is driven by who we are as people and how we connect with ourselves and the challenges. So the work I'm doing is really about the inner work within the organizations. Is that, are we transforming from the inside? And that's as people, as leaders who are, because an organization isn't your brand, your product, it's a bunch of people working towards a common goal, and that's what makes up your organization. So how do you as people connect with the challenge ahead, and how your business needs to change? And I am working with organizations to see how their leadership impacts also the change that happens in your organizations. How do you create space for innovation and creativity, and how do you make space for psychological safety, and how that is so connected to the way in which you're leading? Happy to talk if you want to get in touch with me and address that a little deeper, but I hope that's a short enough answer.
Yeah, thank you. I don't see any questions, and we're almost on time for closing the session. So yeah, as Chaya mentioned, the recording and the slides will be available on the website of the DIH for you to look at in future. Thank you again, Chaya, for sharing this knowledge with us. Yeah, there's somebody thanking everybody, so that's also nice to see. And we'll see you again, maybe somewhere in September for the follow-up webinar on team building. So we're excited for that. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and until next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.